Armed Forces Minister in Wales, Julie James, has kindly agreed to join me for a conversation with regards to events and things that are happening here. The pandemic has affected a number of things this year, Julie, especially Halloween and Guy Fawkes. We didn't have displays, but for a simple reason, the Welsh Government decided to go ahead with Remembrance. And why was that reason? What was the reason?
Because it's incredibly important, isn't it, that we remember. We will have to commemorate the occasion very differently this year, of course, reflecting the restrictions that are in place as a result of the ongoing pandemic. But it's absolutely a significant moment in our nation's history. We pause to pay tribute to those lost in conflict and the families that suffer as a result of that, and to honour the memory of those who made that ultimate sacrifice. So it's very important that we commemorate it, even though it's very different this year. So a small number of pre-planned events are scheduled to take place, much reduced in numbers rather than in previous years. They're invited guests only, and there'll be a national moment of remembrance, which will be marked with a 2-minute silence at 11 a.m. as well. So we're encouraging people to stay home and mark the occasion appropriately for themselves, in line with current social distancing and public gathering guidelines, unless they've been specifically invited, in which case the organisers will have all the COVID-19 spaces and all the rest of it set out for you. So I also wanted to make sure that the veterans who want to attend the memorial events were able to do so. So, for example, I'm not going to the memorial event here in Swansea in the centre because a lot of people wanted to, but I will be laying my own wreath quietly on my own at a different time over the weekend. So it's important for the right people to be there, and of course it's important for social leaders to be there, but it's much more important for the veterans and their families to be there. So we are asking people to stay away and do something quietly at home in remembrance this year, and perhaps go to a cenotaph at another time when there won't be anybody else around.
This is a hugely poignant time, of course, for veterans and armed forces, but we have to acknowledge as well the work being done currently. During the pandemic, we're seeing a number, hundreds, thousands, getting involved in helping with build field hospitals, helping with test centres, driving, maybe blood platelets, things around the country as well. What recognition would you like to pay to them this weekend?
Oh, absolutely. Without the support of the armed forces families, much of the work would never have been completed in time, and we're incredibly grateful to them. There are families that are used to going an extra mile for other people, helping people in dreadful times, so without them we would never have got anywhere. I also wanted to pay tribute to the army itself. Without the army logisticians, I can't say that word, logistics specialists, without the army helping us, we would never have got the PPE that we had in Wales out to our care homes and our other staff and personnel as fast as we did. They've been absolutely excellent. They've stepped up to that plate and really helped us. So it's the families, the veterans, volunteering out there in the communities and helping everyone, and the army itself. Well worth mentioning.
The lockdown has been particularly difficult for most of us. We've all struggled at times, and I've been speaking to a number of veteran-related charities who provide help and support to those in the community. Minds at War, they are an English-based charity, but they help veterans in the UK, provide a 24/7 helpline, and they saw a call rise of 81% since January, and to date 73 people, veterans, have taken their lives across the UK, 7 of whom were from Wales. Do you think Wales should have its own crisis helpline for veterans?
So the answer to that is no, because it's very difficult for us to communicate separate numbers and lines out to people. A lot of people in Wales get their news and everything from national media, but what we do want to do is make sure that we pick up the calls from those helplines and then get the help to people who need it here in Wales. And so what we've done is, through our armed forces scoping exercise, we know how much loneliness and isolation can be caused, and we've got a strategy called Connected Communities, a strategy for tackling loneliness, rolling out in Wales. So we've been giving out grants to organisations including the VC Gallery in Pembrokeshire and the Army Families Federation to help with social loneliness and social isolation. And what we need to do, Emma, is make sure that calls picked up from the national UK helpline are fed through into the right kind of support mechanisms for people so that they can get the help they so richly deserve.
I have a particular interest in inmates behind bars because I used to be regional ambassador for Care After Combat, and the percentages are around 5 to 7% of inmates across the UK are veterans. It's the largest cohort. Care After Combat would normally see 70 to 100 people throughout the 6 Welsh prisons it covers. Also, they deal with those returning to Wales after release. The charity has proven to reduce reoffending rates in Wales, and I know that I've seen the figures previously by 96% after 12 months post-release. Are you offering help and support to veterans who are in the prison system because they haven't been able to see visitors? Rob, who runs the Wales office, has told me that it's been difficult to get their mentors in. They have veterans mentoring veterans. I know that prison visits were stopped. They're now allowing, I believe, one in during their visits, rotas. So what role are you playing in making sure that they still see people, that they're still getting that interaction?
Yeah, so we've been working really hard on this. This is really difficult, isn't it? Getting the visiting right and still getting pandemic safe practices and so on. So it's been difficult in a large number of areas, prisons being one of them, absolutely, Emma. And so what we've been doing is providing some funding, £120,000 worth of funding, to go out to the armed forces community to support some of the charities that support the visiting in normal times and to help them prepare for COVID safe visiting. We've also been working with the prison authorities. Prisons aren't devolved to Wales, but we are responsible for health, education and social services inside the prisons. So we've been working with the prison authorities to understand what would need to be done in the prisons to enable some of the visiting to take place safely and so that we can get it up and running again as soon as possible. We've also been continuing to support the projects with service children, families and schools with resources and guidance to help out. I'm sure you've seen the video, Invisible Walls, of the little boy whose dad has been taken into prison. I'm going to choke up even thinking about it because it really brings home to you the effect on children of their fathers being taken away like that. It feels like a bereavement to them, doesn't it? So supporting those families as well as the prisoners inside with visits and making sure that they stay connected to their families is really important to us. So we've been working hard with the prison authorities. And the last thing I wanted to say on that is when people come out of prison, we've been working really hard with the prison authorities to make sure that the pathway to ensure that a veteran in particular coming out of prison is picked up by the pathway, and we absolutely make sure that they don't become homeless and that they have all the support mechanisms in place. And I'm really pleased that we've been able to make a real difference during the pandemic to some of those issues as well.
I put a call out to some veterans asking for some questions to come back to put to you today, and one came in from a lady called Finn in Porthcawl. She wants to know why there isn't an Armed Forces liaison officer for Powys, the county, she says, with the biggest military presence in Wales.
So I'm a bit puzzled by that because we've got armed forces liaison officers in all our local authorities. They've all been rolled out. It's possible that Finn had a look at it when the funding ceased just at the end of last year, but we've restarted it again. So I hope she didn't try and contact them just in the small gap. But I'm very happy to put her in touch with the armed forces liaison officer. If she wants to drop me an email, I'd be very happy to do that, Emma. We're really pleased to have been able to support the Armed Forces Liaison Officers. We love an acronym. We call them AFLOs, of course, in the Welsh Government, but we support them in every authority, and their role is to get engagement with the veteran communities and the army communities in Wales. Wales is a very proud record of contributing personnel to the army, and we really want to make sure that our families are supported well at this terrible time and actually at all times.
We saw the UK government introduce an office for Veterans Affairs. The year anniversary was in October. Why hasn't Wales followed suit? Why haven't we got a similar office?
Well, we're very small in Wales, of course, so we've got a much smaller government and so on. So I suppose our answer to that is that myself and Hannah Blythen have been working very hard on veterans matters in Wales, and we have dedicated officials inside the Welsh Government who perform that role. What we've been doing is working with the MOD on UK Covenant legislation to embed the Covenant and its principles in all areas, and making sure that when the UK government, as you know, I'm sure they've committed to introducing legislation to embed the Armed Forces Covenant, and we're just making sure that we track that and make sure that it's fit for purpose in Wales. So it puts all the right obligations on us in Wales so that we can carry that through as well.
That leads me nicely into the next question, which is all about Armed Forces Covenant, because as radio stations, we really like to do something special every year to bring people together, to make them feel part of our radio family. And last year we organised a Veteran Network Day, which you kindly attended. This year you were due to be our opening address speaker, which sadly it didn't happen due to COVID. Part of the remit for that was trying to get as many businesses. We were going to try to set a record, really, trying to get as many businesses as possible from our area to sign up to the Armed Forces Covenant. We were going to be one of those businesses. Bauer Media and The Wave and Greatest Hits Radio were going to sign on the dotted line. How important is it to have that support?
Oh, absolutely essential, isn't it? So I think it's a really important thing for local businesses to understand the contribution that veterans can make to the business. And I think getting that message out there is really important. We absolutely rightly look at some of the problems that veterans face when they're out in the community, and we want to solve those problems. But in doing so, we can sometimes over highlight problems and under highlight all of the incredible skills and resource that Army personnel, or forces personnel, not just Army personnel, Armed Forces personnel, can bring to local businesses. And actually easing the path into employment and civilian life is a really important part of the covenant, isn't it? So your role in highlighting that and making sure that businesses are aware and rewarded actually for coming forward and doing that, in the sense that you talk about them, and our role as the local politicians in doing that is absolutely essential, isn't it, to make that happen. That's why I was really pleased with the event I did come to. I got around all the stalls and talked to all the people that were there. It was really sad that we couldn't do it, but we'll be able to do it again next year, won't we? And it's just so important to make sure that we give people recognition when they do step forward in that capacity. And I think, Emma, I'd just really like to say that you've done such a fantastic job of bringing everybody together. I'm really, really pleased to be involved in it.